Hi. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Yeah, my name is Fabian. I'm part of the founding team of World, a project co-founded by a friend of mine, Alex, and Sam Altman roughly 5 to 6 years ago. And our mission or our purpose, why we exist, is we want to define humanness in the age of AI, and we want to prepare humanity for the age of AI. Like roughly 5, 6 years ago, when Sam back then was already leading OpenAI, he kind of thought like, what happens if the rate of progression just continues as it was back then? And he was, throwing around like that AGI is around the corner, and that very soon it will be hard to distinguish humans from bots. And I can tell you, 5 years ago, that was really a stretch to believe that. But then ChatGPT happened, and the last 2 years were kind of crazy. And I think now everyone is on the same page that it is indeed very hard at this point to distinguish humans from bots, and also that AI will take over more and more value creation in our economy. So how can we prepare humanity for that? One thing that, or two things that basically happen because of this development is that one, accounts in your products, it is increasingly hard to tell if it's like a real human creating this account or taking this action, or if it's just a bot. That is maybe tough for metrics, but it is also tough for certain business models. So if you look, for example, at the business model of YouTube, which is you have advertisers on the one side and creators in the middle and consumers on the other side, it is increasingly difficult for Google to distinguish, to actually come up like with a real count of organic views on a video, and by that keep the compensation fair of those creators, and also keep the advertiser experience or the return of invest fairly high. So we had the head of payments of Google recently joined like the World project, Ajay, who is now leading World ID, because it was just increasingly, he just saw us as like the only organizational project that is set up to actually solve this. And you will see more and more of those and similar business models who face major challenges. So Sam really kind of sat down and put out this vision. Okay, these are the challenges that we are facing. How can we address those? And he threw out this very broad idea. Hey, I think we have networks for everything, for social, for messaging, but we actually don't have it for identity and finance yet. There were a few attempts, but nothing has yet reached like 1 billion people or 1 billion human scale. So he said the mission of this project needs to be that we build the largest and most comprehensive identity and financial network on the planet. It needs to work for all of humanity, independent of nations. And we want to enable businesses to truly enable them to distinguish humans from bots when it comes to account creation, but also to distinguish to actually tell if a human took a certain action for the first time. So you enable certain voting voting applications in the future. Obviously, that's a very big vision, and we saw already that the industry is kind of slowly adopting it, but we still had to come up with like a name that is kind of catchy. And the name for the underlying technology of this network is World ID. World ID is our identity protocol that is human-centric. It's privacy-preserving. That was something very important to Sam also back in the days. He said like the way how Google and all those other players are currently kind of moving is kind of collecting more and more data, right? You present your passport. The tendency is that you present your passport today more often to digital products than 10 years ago. Now, World ID as a protocol is built in a way that it does not know anything about you. It just knows that you're a unique human being and that you did something for the very first time. And it needs to be self-custodial. Because if it's not self-custodial, that was always our true belief, it is set up for being cracked down as you are on the path to success. And our vision is really that we see major tech platforms, and this slide honestly is like a year or 2 year old. Now we already have like much more traction than back then. But our vision is that verified accounts don't come with payment walls, but that because payment walls was, I think, a few years back a solution that everyone thought is like a great idea, but I think everyone came to the realization that it's not really scalable. And we want to be the underlying infrastructure that powers verified accounts that are accessible to everyone. Now, how does our technology work? If you want to build something for 1 billion people scale, and that's how we kind of sat down back then as a founding team, is it needs to be that simple, right? The user journey needs to be, it cannot be like a crypto user journey, it cannot be like a tech user journey, it needs to be something that is on the level of using WhatsApp, right? Because otherwise you will only capture the tech crowd. So the user journey as of today is indeed very simple. Every one of you can go to the App Store right now, doesn't matter if it's Android or Apple. You can download our consumer-facing product, which is called World App. Now, maybe a comment why we ended up building our own wallet. The problem is you want to build something self-custodial. That is why we ended up doing it in the crypto space. But most of the wallets in the crypto space are very focused on power users or like people from this space, right? If I give some of those wallets to my sister or my brother, they are a little bit lost in between like creating seed phrases and messing around with wallet addresses. So if you look at wallet, it lacks a lot of the power user features that you are used to using other products. But it is a product that can be used. It feels more like a WhatsApp or like Robinhood trading app. So that is World App. Now, once the user has downloaded World App, he can then decide to verify his ID that lives within World App 2 ways. One is orb verified. That is a biometric approach to prove that you're a unique human. And if you're not feeling comfortable using biometrics, there's another way that we launched recently, like sometime last year, that is called where we leverage NFC passports. So most of you have NFC passports when they enter certain countries, and we are rolling this out steadily. It's a lower assurance signal, but that's good enough for some businesses. And once you're verified, you receive your verified World ID and then can prove to other products and services that you're a unique human being. And in some countries, you then can also participate in the Worldcoin airdrop. What does the tech stack look like? So I already briefly talked about World ID. That's our identity protocol. I talked about World App. That is our consumer-facing product that is kind of in the middle. And then orb verification, I will talk about it in a second to talk more about that piece. Worldcoin is our native token. Why? And maybe a comment, why does Worldcoin exist? We always, when you scale networks, you always have this kind of bootstrap problem, right? Why should the first user actually show up to join your network? And the Worldcoin token is actually is something that everyone who verifies his World ID receives as part of being a verified human being, because he as a person increases the value of the network. We see this already. In certain geographies, we have such a high penetration, like in Buenos Aires, that literally every Uber driver has World App installed on his phone. Of course, he contributed to the network, and this is the reason why it's now available to local businesses. So it's kind of a bootstrap mechanism for people to join early on. But as people join, they also increase and are active on the network. They also increase the value of the network. And we have World Chain, which is our own layer 2. The main reason, honestly, why we launched this layer 2 is that there were times when originally we were on Optimism mainnet, when our activity was responsible for more than 50% of OP mainnet's capacity, and honestly, we didn't have like another choice to kind of take scaling into our own hands. Now, talking a little bit about orb verification first, before I talk about NFC verification. If you don't want to rely on government IDs and want to come up with a way to prove that you're a unique human being, you end up using biometrics. Now, for Sam, it was always very important that it's always privacy preserving, also for like looking at the fundamentals. Now, within biometrics, there are certain biometric features of a human that you leave around as you navigate life, or that are very easy to capture. For example, I checked out of my hotel room today. They have my full name, they have my payment details. That's, I guess, fine, right? But they also have my fingerprints, I'm pretty sure, and there are also for sure hairs in the bathroom. So if somebody wants, he has like the full, he has basically like a full data set of identifying me, reaching from DNA to fingerprint to full name and address. So fingerprint and DNA was not really an option for us. Then there are a lot of like other approaches that leverage face. First of all, face for uniqueness is not really scalable, but face is also too easy to capture. Like because you walk by with a low quality camera, you can easily do like a face embedding comparison. So what we ended up using, and the reason why we also use this because there's already proof that it works on 100 million people scale, is the iris texture. There was a project in India called Aadhaar, where they already proved that this is good enough or it works for telling if a person is unique on like hundreds of millions of people scale. Now, if you look at iris, we didn't want to build hardware. I was responsible for the whole hardware program in the first couple of years. It was really a pain, and I really tried hard to find a product off the shelf that we can just customize. Now, the problem is most of biometric technology is built for the same purpose like your Face ID in your iPhone. It just compares you against a certain subset of registered users. Are you one of the 5 people that has access to this room, or are you one of the single person that should have access to this phone? If the scan doesn't go quite right, you just scan again because at some point the door will open, right? But this is a very different use case. Like for delivering on such a value, you can have like a fairly low quality when it comes to the camera and stuff. Our device doesn't need to answer the question, are you one of 10 people? Our device and technology needs to answer the question, do I see you for the first time on a global scale in 20 seconds? And that's fundamentally much harder if you want to then scale this technology to 1 billion people while not having a central database. So the orb is like an iris imaging system with probably the highest resolution on the market. The reason is because we have a very unique use case. It incorporates a lot of sensors on top of that detect if you try to trick us, meaning it can detect all kinds of contact lenses and masks and whatever, like all kinds of approaches to alter the iris texture. It needs to do all the integrity checks locally. It does all the segmentation of the images locally. So the only thing the only data that is actually leaving the orb is an iris code that before it leaves gets cut into pieces, individually encrypted, sent to individual nodes that are operated by individual partners. We call this AMPC, standing for Anonymous Multi-Party Computation. And then those snippets within those nodes are then compared across those nodes to actually tell if the user tries to sign up for the first time. Now, for the operator, this needs to be super simple. It needs to push a button. The user shows a QR code. Then it feels like capturing an image. So it needs to be very, very simple. So plus, it needs to look inviting, and it needs to work in unsupervised use cases. I can just tell you back then, when we had like this set of requirements, it was totally unclear that it would look that nice in the end. Like I'm from Germany. I originally proposed it should be just a black box because then it's simple and easy to manufacture. But I also got the point that it needs to look inviting. Now, obviously, this was not like an overnight development. We had multiple iterations. And there's a new one that is not even on this slide, the one that you saw on the previous one, the white one, which will now step by step replace all devices in the field. And of course, everything needs to be secure while being open source. That is also interesting, right? Because most of the security in the hardware space is based on obscurity. It's just like being super closed source, and you hide certain switches here and there. But if you actually release all your underlying hardware or all your underlying like circuit schematics and mechanical parts in order to build trust with the public, you have to be much more creative how you actually, from an architectural point of view, ensure that the overall system is safe and auditable. So that was kind of briefly talking about the ORB verification, why it exists and how we realized it. Now, NFC-enabled IDs is fairly simple. Every one of you has like a travel passport already. We call this World ID credentials. It's not really proof of humanness, it's more like proof of document, because I'm pretty sure here we also have some power users that have multiple passports. So this is, for us, a very low assurance signal that we added for the sake of completeness, while the ORB verified credential is for us the fundamental signal of proving humanness to platforms. We're rolling this out steadily for multiple countries. One might think there's a common standard across those passports. I can tell you that's not the case. It's a very painful process country by country. Now, how do we check if a user is globally unique? I briefly already talked about it, what is kind of happening when I talked about the ORB. We are calling this whole decentralized database AMPC, Anonymous Multi-Party Computation. And this means that the iris code that leaves the ORB as a result of the sign-up is not stored at one central database, but cut into snippets and then sent to independent nodes that are operated across multiple countries. We have Berkeley in the US, we have University of Zurich in Switzerland, and FAU in Germany. Why FAU? Because the whole founding team studied there, and that's how we all met each other. So that's why we have like a German university in here. And then one, Nethermind Security, some might know, is like a contract service provider. This means that even if one node is compromised, never leaks a full iris code, and the risk of collusion is very low. Now, we kind of built all of this. We have identity, we have finance, because every customer that signs up with and gets his verified World app also has a crypto wallet where he then receives the Worldcoin tokens that have some economic value. He's a verified human being, and we have like a lot of users. So we have identity, finance, and distribution. So we thought, like, what do we do now? How do we actually make this useful beyond the airdrop? How do we build real world value? And there are two pieces, right? But one very important decision that we made last year is that with having this foundation, we can enable a new set of applications that can be deployed. And that's why we decided to launch Mini Apps. Mini Apps is an app store living in World app and gives like developers a fairly easy access to accessing like the World ID credentials, but also the financial wallet. Now, the fundamental difference to when you deploy like an app like on any other app store is that the developers actually know that every interaction is a verified human being, so they can cut a lot of the noise in, for example, the user sign-up flow, and they can think of new incentive mechanisms because they just know there is not something like one person operating 100 accounts. So we see like a lot of new like game mechanisms or customer engagement concepts like across multiple categories. And this was fairly successful over the last 6 months. We now have already 174 mini apps. Total opens within the last 7 days, and these are not like every of these opens is like driven by a real human. 26 million, and total opens all time up to 700 million. Next to mini apps, we also do integrations. So if someone, for example, has like uses Shopify for his online shop, he can now, for example, integrate World ID in the checkout flow, so he enables his customers to claim one-time vouchers for, you have like maybe someone where you want to give like first-time customers a 50% discount without, collecting like a bunch of data. Now he can integrate World ID in the checkout flow. The user with his World app verifies that he's a unique human being, and that's how you can hand out these vouchers while not having like a lot of risk of marketing leakage. Then we launched like roughly 1.5 years ago, I think, or yeah, less than 2 years ago, is when the token went live, which means that the incentive was real. And until today, we have 12 million verified humans. We have in total 25 million people that have some sort of a World ID. This could be just a download. And we have a total of 320 million transactions. These could be financial transactions and or identity transactions. We don't have so much DeFi activity on our platform. So please keep in mind, if you look at this number of transactions, these are actions driven by real humans. These are not inflated metrics. And we have those 12 or 25 million users. They are obviously concentrated in a few markets where we were very successful. This is huge parts of LATAM and huge parts of the APAC region, for example, Malaysia. Now, it was always hard for us. It was all, and that's a personal focus of myself. We always wanted to move beyond providing integrations and driving mini apps, because I think what you ultimately want to achieve is that you get a partnership with a market leader in his category, because that is what truly validates you as a product. And that is something, a deal I was personally heavily involved in, and I'm super passionate about, because I was growing up with the products of this company. It was kind of surreal for me to sit in front of the CEO. And we kind of were able to win Razer, which is headquartered in Singapore, to enter, to build a product with us together. It's already live. So Razer is known for selling PC mice and keyboards in the high-end gaming segment. But what they also do, and a lot of don't know, under different brands, they operate one of the largest payment networks in the APAC region. And Razer Gold, their payment network, is basically powering a lot of the in-game, like is used in, like the Razer Gold is used behind the scenes, like for purchasing in-game items and a lot of very well-known titles in this region as well. And Razer ID is kind of the account the wallet that powers all of this. So Razer ID is, because the payment system is integrated in a lot of products, already integrated in a lot of games, and now we basically will kind of build this out to also add an identity piece to it, and enable game developers to build experiences around real humans without asking for additional data. And we already have the first title, which is will be released in, I think, 1 or 2 months, which is called Tokyo Beast, by a publisher called Cyber Agent. It's like one of the top 3 publishers in Japan that already now has a game where we have a special experience built around real humans, and you don't have those strange limitations that some of you might know, where you can only do like 10 sessions a day if there's like a small play-to-earn piece to it. And just as I come to the end of my presentation, we have like from time to time, we have those big events where we announce big new things. So and it happens to be that in 2 weeks, we have another one on April 30th, where Alex and Sam will give like an update on what's next. And you can register if you're in San Francisco, or you can watch the live stream on the live.world.org. So I invite everybody who is interested to kind of what we're up to for the next couple of months. And with this, I'm done with my presentation, and I hope I was able to provide a quick overview. Thank you.